If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
Imagine this scenario. Your power's been out for 11 days. Your local police department is operating with a third of its normal staffing. The county sheriff is managing a jurisdiction 3 times its normal coverage area. The National Guard's been deployed to the state capitol, and the man who showed up at your neighbor's door yesterday wasn't from FEMA. He offered your neighbor a case of bottled water, a bag of rice, and protection for his family. All he wanted in return was a small weekly payment and the understanding that any disputes in the neighborhood would be resolved through him. Your neighbor said yes. He was hungry and afraid. The offer seemed reasonable. That was the moment the vacuum filled, not with an invasion, with a transaction. And your community just lost the governance war before it even knew there was one. Welcome to Survival Dispatch News for Friday, June 12th, 2026. I'm Chris Evan, the CEO of Survival Dispatch, joined tonight by 24-year CBP Special Agent J.J. Carroll, combat wounded Green Beret Randy Nance, and 26-year CIA case officer Jeff M.D. Bottom line up front, when law enforcement capacity collapses, the vacuum fills quickly. In many communities, cartel-linked and criminal networks will step into the gap, not as invaders, but as organizers. Once that control is established, it is extremely difficult to reverse. These networks already exist in many American communities. Collapse won't create them. It will remove the barriers that currently limit their power. So what we're covering tonight is how criminal governance expands, the warning signs of cartel consolidation, the path to the tribute system, and 3 steps your household can take to avoid being caught inside it. Jumping directly into segment number 1, how cartel territorial expansion actually works, the organizational model and the expansion sequence. Cartels don't expand through occupation. They expand through service delivery using protection, supply access, dispute resolution, and employment to fill governance gaps when institutional authority weakens. Expansion follows existing criminal networks and trafficking corridors, consolidating through a mix of selective violence and services that make cooperation seem safer than resistance. Communities that have lost cohesion, leadership, and the ability to act collectively will be the most vulnerable, with criminal governance often accepted long before organized resistance can emerge. With that being said, I'm going to bring the panel on stage here and going directly to Encyclopedia MD as per usual. Jeff, walk us through the organizational structure of a cartel or a cartel affiliated network and how they actually establish, for lack of a better term, territorial governance in a new community. And then just to prime the conversation, JJ, I'm coming to you right after that because I want to hear, you have extensive experience with the cartels, a real world example of this. But Jeff, take it away.
Well, I think JJ probably better positioned to answer this question. He's dealt with cartels directly more than I have. But from what I understand and what I've seen is they have territories, be it for drug smuggling, human trafficking, or whatever. And it's kind of a top-down approach. You have a person who's in charge of a territory, and then he has, people under him, starting with, he may have sicarios, he's got other logistics people, and it goes all the way down to the lookouts on the corner that tell him when, the police or the military is rolling through. Or in what I saw firsthand down in Laredo, they sit on the river on the Mexican side, and anytime the Border Patrol boats would go down, or they'd see Border Patrol patrolling on the American side, they had their little radios. They would call back up the line, and it would get to the guy who's in charge of the region. And if they had a shipment that was about to go through, or people, they would say, okay, we'll halt them, or okay, they're over to the south. We'll send people over on the north. We'll send where they aren't. But they were keeping tabs on Border Patrol operations pretty consistently. But then you have enforcers, you have soldiers, you have enforcers that if someone gets out of line, they handle it. But then, that the head of that region reports to somebody higher up the food chain. And ultimately, there's the head of the cartel who's in charge of everything.
Yeah. So, JJ, tell me about your experience with cartels, especially the ones that have, usurped this kind of power in Mexico, but it's also happened here, right? I mean, the ℔ thing with the apartments in Aurora, Colorado is a kind of pretty similar thing, right?
Yeah, they're just going to spread out and take territory, and they're more violent than any gangs we have in America. One thing that I noticed down in the border was that the narco smugglers detested the human smugglers, so they didn't even mix with them. They would just and when the narco smugglers saw that a route was more beneficial and the human smugglers found it, they would just move the human smugglers out. Like literally just say, we own it now. And they would just give it up. I'll give you a great example is when I was running Coastal Border Enforcement Team, CBET, on the coast. So we would sit on the coastline at night from San Diego all the way up to Santa Barbara every night. I had a 60-man unit. And we had high-powered cameras called FLIRs that would see out into the ocean 6-7 miles. And then we would sit on the coast highways and see the scout vehicles come through, and then all the load vans and load vehicles come through, and the U-Hauls to drop off the mules, 20, 30 mules to be able to bring the narcotics up from the beachhead. Prior to that, all it was human smuggling, all of it. And then literally overnight, like that fast, it went to narco smuggling. And you give me 1 minute just to tell you the story where, and it happened to me. I was a leader of the 60-man unit as a supervisor, but the transition happened to me, and it was kind of shocking because I had, for about a year and a half, all I dealt with landed on the beach with these giant Mexican open bow fishing vessels called pangas. And they would land and, have 30 people on them, and they'd have a couple guides, and they would load up into a van or an RV and just take off. And one night and our radio comms are atrocious. So the guy that's on the FLIR is talking to me in my car radio and saying, hey, the boat is offshore, it's coming in. And it cuts out. And I walk down the beach line around the rocks in San Clemente where President Nixon's old house was. And I was going up there, and in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, the boat's going to already be beached. There's going to be 30, 35 people walking to me. I have to take these guys down. My backup's coming in a minute. And I walk up on 5 guys all dressed in black. And I'm looking at the beach, and I see no boat. And I'm like, what in the hell's going on? And I speak to them in Spanish, and they speak right back to me in English. And they're like, I don't have to listen to you, F you. And for a second, I was stunned because I was waiting for 35 people in a boat. So I destroyed that first guy. They're like sheep, and he started circling around me. So I caved that guy's skull in and threw him into the rocks, then laid them all down to figure out what's going on. The boat had taken off, and it landed in about 10 miles up in a very exclusive neighborhood where Oprah Winfrey lives and all them. And it was a narco boat. And my whole team were like, what just happened? And literally that fast, the narco smugglers took over the maritime routes. And that's what you're going to see in America. If we have this catastrophe happen, if we have a giant race war, right? And it devours our country. and there's going to be a vacuum that's going to provide power, structure, food, water. They're going to take it, but it's going to happen instantly. It's not going to be a long, drawn-out process. They're literally going to move in and set up shop.
Man, that's crazy. I got to ask you before I go to Randy, what are the rules of engagement for CBP? Like if one of those guys had a shot at you or even taken a swing at you.
Kill him. No, if he took a swing at me, then I have to use the necessary force. But if 5 guys start coming on me, then it's my gun comes out and I have to start shooting and get them to stop. But that time, I'll never forget. The guy, the kid was about 20. They're all like in their early 20s, 19 to about 23 is 5 of them. And the ringleader was real mouthy, and he was like trying to throw me off. And he's like, "No, I don't have to listen to you. Shut the F up. You're nothing but a cracker. You don't get to talk to me like that." And then it took me like it was a lag time in my mind trying to figure out what's good. Did I just walk up on 5 dudes? Like, what are 5 dudes doing at 2:00 in the morning, all wearing black? And then I saw them fan out on me, and then it struck. Oh crap! These guys are the load guys. I don't know what they're here for, but they're picking up the bodies. And I went right for the leader. I struck him so hard, I almost knocked his skull in. I picked him up and I threw him into the rocks, giant rocks that line the coast. And then the criminals are sheep. They're scared to death. And I just told them all lay down, and they all did because they're scared to death. And then I sacked them up, and then I was like, what is happening? And that was my real first awakening to how fast the narco smugglers work. And they took over the entire Pacific coastline overnight. And then we didn't catch another body load until Biden came in office.
Man, that's absolutely crazy. So as JJ's saying this, Randy, I'm thinking about your time in the Middle East, and I'm thinking about, the things that we get warnings every so often from sheriff's offices saying, hey, there's this gang, that gang, in this part of Central Florida. And these are the things that they're doing and to look out for. What did the bad guys in Baghdad do as far as, scoping things out, gathering intel on all the other people, Randy, when Baghdad fell before they kicked it into action? I'm assuming you guys were watching these guys basically taking stock of everything.
Well, you have to remember then I was a private, so I didn't have privy to everything that was going on. But I will say, it's like JJ just basically laid out what I've said several times on the show. When the 3 days of looting stopped, within a couple of days, the criminals started coming out. With a couple of weeks, they, basically had all their, this is who owned this and who owned that. And as I said even here would be the same way. And what happens is, and he's probably exactly right, it would be the cartels, because you've heard me say before, it's whoever has the resources and already in place and the men in place and the structure, the networks that are able to, they will come out right away and take over. That's exactly what will happen. And, as we know, the cartels have already got networks, they've been here for decades, and they've done nothing but got smarter and stronger and stealthier. So, and more armed, more prepared. And that would make perfect sense because they're able to go out and take control of folks. And as JJ pointed out, they're more violent than anybody else, any of our street gangs. So when they come in and start whacking people, what do you think is going to happen? Everybody's just going to fall right in line. If they own that piece, you're not going to do much inside there that they don't know about.
Yeah, it's interesting that both of you would hit on the violence with these guys. Just like a quick anecdotal story. When Keith Graves retired from being a law enforcement officer, he was a subject matter expert in gang interdiction and drug interdiction, and he had just started his social media stuff because, of course, he had a secret social media profile that not everybody knew at the time. He was chief sheriff from River City Police in California, which was a spoof on his captain. But anyway, he put some stuff up on different social media platforms that he could use to teach the FBI and other agencies, this is what you're up against with these cartel guys. And he got kicked off of all these different platforms because they said he was, glorifying violence and stuff. And he finally found Substack, and he sent it to Substack. He said, "Hey, I'm a former cop. I teach law enforcement. If I put this stuff on your platform, are you going to kick me off?" And they were the first ones that said, "No, you're okay. You're in the clear to go ahead and do that." But Jeff, I want to ask you about the proliferation of cartels, just to go off the brief for a second here. I want to say a year ago or so, I read a couple articles that basically said the cartels have a presence in every American city, including small, medium, and large. It's not just the large cities. And that if and when the day comes that there's a collapse in law enforcement, they've situated themselves perfectly for that. Maybe expand on that topic for our audience, Jeff.
Yeah, the different cartels, and it can be, Tren de Aragua, it can be, the 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐜𝐫𝐢 New Generation. It can, there's a ton of them. But it can also be different gangs. It can be ethnic. It could be Vietnamese gangs. It could be Chinese tongs. Depends on where you are. But you're talking about the Latin American cartels. Yeah, they're pretty much everywhere. Now, they may not have, 100 guys, but I can guarantee you there is somebody there in any kind of a medium-sized city and up, some with 10, 20,000 people. There's probably somebody there who can, if they call up and say, "Okay, we're coming in. We need somewhere to stay. We need to find out this. We need that." Somebody can answer that, because with all the illegals we've let in, and the way they have spread all across the country, and a lot of them work in agriculture and construction, they're everywhere, and it's the perfect community for the cartels to infiltrate and hide in. Because if they see them, they don't think cartel member. They think, okay, it's just another illegal construction worker. And so they can, and they may not even be working, but they don't raise suspicion. They don't stand out. In the old days, I remember growing up in Arkansas, we had a Filipino family move to town, and nobody knew what to do with them. They didn't know how to treat them because they weren't white and they weren't black. Now, that same town there's boatloads of illegals there, working on farms and, pickle plants and things like that. So they blend, and it's really, it's camouflage for them.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I actually read maybe 2 years ago after Victor Avila from the Fast and Furious debacle said to me that when TDA came into America, they specifically sought out Venezuelan neighborhoods because those Venezuelans knew how vicious TDA was, and they'd roll over quickly for them, and boom, they would take control. JJ, I want to come back to the story you told, just because you tweaked me on something. When a cartel takes over that, I don't know what you want to call it, bad pun, beachhead, what does that say as far as the expansion of that cartel is concerned? Like, do they go in, they take the distribution route? What does that tell us as far as what's going to happen next?
Well, all the intel, and is actually, we all know it now, is there used to be the demarcation where the narcos would bring over the dope, mule it by people through the desert, drive it through, take it through tunnels, and then they would distribute it to the Aryan Nation Brotherhood and all those biker gangs and everyone else, like the Latin Kings, all that, and they would become the distribution arm. But because the border's so wide open, and you could, there was a gentleman that I apologize to forget his name, but he is an expert on this, and I was on an interview with him, and he's absolutely correct. Because Joe Biden opened the border and made it so easy for the narco smugglers to come and go with their loads and with their infrastructure building, they lay down their infrastructure in America. So now they control the production, the travel in it and transportation, and now the distribution of it. So they handle everything. The narco smugglers, the cartels, are here in America. And that's what people don't want to hear. They're already here. There's videos of them playing their music, driving around our highways looking for cops with their M4s or AR-15s and all their long arms with gold-plated crap all over it. They're already here because our government left the border completely wide open. So they've already taken all their land that they need.
Well, JJ, I don't imagine that there's a uniform time frame, but my understanding is that these guys, they come into a new geography, and there's some, call it selective violence, like, but over the top selective violence. After that, the things pretty much calm down because everybody's scared to death of them, and they just go with whatever they say because they don't want to be beheaded or something horrible like that.
Well, yeah, well, they do, just like Jeff said, they're going to blend into the community. They're not going to come live in Kansas with a bunch of white guys. If they're going to go to Kansas, they're going to go to Olathe, Kansas, which used to be a nice country town. Now it's riddled with Mexicans and Central Americans. So you just go there and you blend in. You have no idea. You have no idea who you're living next to. You don't even know if there's 90 people in there. They're moving people or narcotics because they don't want. They're not. This isn't the movies. This isn't Hollywood with strippers in your house going in and out all night long, and people driving Mercedes. I mean, these are savages, and they're a business though, and I think that is what we miss on everything is we don't respect them as a business, and they are extremely well organized, very efficient in their delivery. They utilize all of the infrastructure we built out in America, airports, interstates, freeways, distribution hubs. They do the same thing as Amazon. They are Amazon, but just they'll kill you. That's it.
That's an interesting analogy. I will probably end up quoting you on that one. Randy, I want to hear your thoughts on is there any way you can spot these guys after what JJ just said? Because I'm thinking even 30, 40 years ago in DFW, we had a huge Hispanic population, and now it seems like there's more of them than there are of us. Any suggestions on how you can even identify these guys?
Well, they usually, they're criminals, so they can identify themselves also. But I would say that now that we know, certainly the cartels out of Mexico have transitioned to special operations soldiers from the Mexican army, that they probably are a little better about hiding in public, certainly over here. But the reality is, when it comes down to it, they will show their true colors. I mean, like I said, they're criminals. They'll once they feel free to do whatever they want to do, they're going to have a sense of entitlement and confidence that whatever they're going to do is going to be fine, and they will not be held accountable. So they will start doing whatever it is they do to take charge and to start reeling things in. And I think that my opinion is, if it ever came to that, just like this, I think that really, yes, I think the cartels are dangerous, and I think there's a lot of bad stuff that can happen, but I go back to what Jeff said earlier, if we had a civil war or race war, maybe it was JJ, I don't know, one of the two, but, that would be the start of it because, really even the cartels would want to wait till we're damaged goods, basically. And then it's a walkover. It's a pushover at that point. Or could be. And, I know there was some guy in here spouting off a little bit ago, about the 20 million combat veterans. Yeah, I'm one of them, pal. And here's reality. We didn't own the neighborhoods over there. No, we didn't have 20 million. But you're not going to really have 20 million here because not everybody's connected. There won't be any communication between that. If it was all one force and everybody could communicate, maybe you'd be right. But it's still going to be a fight at the end of the day. If we get to the point that the cartels move in the kind of way that we're talking about, it's going to be because they know they can take charge. And they're not going to do it before that because they don't want to, one, they probably don't want to ruin their moment, but two, they also don't want to end up dead in prison before they do get their moment. So.
Yeah, fair enough.
Can I follow up on what Randy's just saying?
I think absolutely.
This is important. Is the cartels want like I said, this isn't Hollywood. They don't want any spotlight on them at all. And on the border and in the coastline, it is an unwritten rule. We are not going to kill you, law enforcement, and you're not going to kill us. So we're going to come in and we're going to give you, if you catch us, we're going to try to get away. But when you catch us and we'll move on. That is literally like an unwritten rule because this is what happens. And I'll give you two examples. We had Robert Rosas was murdered by some people think is narco guys, some people think we're alien smugglers, and he got murdered out by Campo. We shut that effing border down. There ain't nobody crossing. There weren't anybody coming across the port. Nobody was coming across Arizona and California. It was locked the F down. And the cartels started to kill those people and turn them over to America. Why? Because they don't want anything disrupting the movement of their narcotics. And I'll give you another example. I would go to meetings with the Coast Guard and beg them, listen, this is international incursions are happening in our waters, and we're doing nothing, and I need help. We need help. And I kept getting, yeah. And they sent us a Coast Guard cutter or a Zodiac, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a Coast Guard cutter comes up on a Ponga, no dope in it. They've already unloaded the narcotics on an island for a later delivery. But the two savages that were the boat captains weighed in, and the cutter let out a Zodiac. So here comes 2 or 3 coasties on a Zodiac. The savages are probably high on heroin or whatever. Take their Ponga. Think of a school bus with no top to it. That's how big it is, with like 3 or 4 outboard motors, and it goes straight for the coastie Zodiac. Ramps the Zodiac. One of the propellers and engines smash into the guy's head and kills him instantly. There was an armada, a freaking armada on the Mexican coastline. Nobody came across. Nobody. They don't want that. They want to be able to come through. So they're going to be very low key at all times. And then when they need to, they're going to be, when their violence comes out, it's going to be exceptional. It's going to be shocking. And it's going to keep everyone in control, and everyone's going to know. And there's going to be like a cutout to the law enforcement, whatever that law enforcement is, and says, we just had to flex your muscle. We've already pulled back. Let's all get back to normal, and everybody will agree. I know that sounds crazy, but that's how it's done.
So, Jeff, I'm going to give you last question in segment 1, first in segment 2, but I got to come back to JJ on this. JJ, we have a rocket scientist in the audience here. Says being wary only of Hispanic cartels operating U.S. territory is very misguided, because there's plenty of suppressed reports by Latin American journalists that have exposed many collaboration of U.S. white cartels. Tell me about the white cartels, JJ.
Yeah, they're everywhere. You're an idiot. Like you're an idiot. How many white? You're an idiot. I mean, how many white nationalist gangs that we know? What are the 𝐬𝐻𝐫𝐷𝐻 Angels? Have they roamed around the countryside killing people? No. Hey, is that Joe Biden? Did Joe Biden get escape out of his grave and start tweeting or getting on there? I mean, the white nationalists, I love that. The white nationalists. The white people are the only thing keeping this effing country afloat, you jackass. This is a white European nation that has been devoured by our stupidity, and we've and our great empathy and sympathy. And now we're a nation nosediving in population, and now we brought in the entire third world, and now we're going to see the effects of the third world.
Check this out, JJ. So this rocket scientist now says that this is dangerous. You're scapegoating foreign immigrant populations. JJ, 24 years, CBP, law enforcement officer, special agent, follows this stuff really closely. Give me the statistics on violent crime broken down by race, JJ.
Oh, it's all black. And then and I want everyone to be very clear, because I just came out of ICE. The ICE database, when I'm putting someone in, he's an Indian from Guatemala. He has like 5 deuces, crashes and burns. I got another guy is a raging pedophile child rapist, and he looks like he's as brown as a piece of wood, and I have to check white. All the data that you see in the DOJ and FBI is all skewed. It's all an effing lie. All of it.
Explain why you have to check white.
Because there's nothing for Mexicans or Central Americans or South Americans. Nothing.
Caucasian or black, essentially.
Caucasian, black, and I think Asian. And there's never any Asians. I mean, the only Asians that I was arresting were pedophiles. For whatever reason, they love to rape children. For whatever reason.
Oh my God! This rocket scientist now says immigrant population known to be less inclined to criminal activity. You are so far out in left field. It's not even funny. You want the statistics, like JJ said, they're skewed. But when you go to FBI.gov, the stats speak for themselves, and they're actually much worse because of the condition that JJ just described. But
you know what? I love this. I love this argument that these people give is, well, the American population has more violence and crime than Hispanics, and I go, number one, that's a lie, an absolute lie. However, let's play that we're functionally retarded like you are, sir. Is it okay for one woman to be raped in America by illegal alien, and that illegal alien should never been here, right? And then you go, oh, I don't know. Well, wait a minute. Are you married? It's okay for your wife to get raped and murdered and killed and physically mutilated. That's okay. See, when you get down to the brass tacks, when you talk about like what's reality, that's when people they have no comeback. So we'll play that retarded game that you're like a Somalian with an IQ of a pig around 62, and you barely are functioning. Is it okay for 1 million crimes by illegal aliens every year? See, because there's at least 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 million crimes committed by illegal aliens every single year. But minimum, big numbers, huge. And those people have no retort. All they care about is the destruction of America. I want them all out of my country, and I mean all of them. I don't care who you are, where you're from. Get the fuck out of my country now. And I want a president that will give me mass deportations, and Donald Trump is not that man.
Amen to the remigration. I have a great song that JJ's been working on, but I'm not going to play it right now. It's on that particular topic.
Okay, this idiot goes, immigrant populations are known to be less inclined to criminal activity, and the undocumented populations even more so. Their presence here is criminal activity.
Exactly.
So I'm saying murderers are less violent than other criminals, except they're murderers and they've killed someone. Except for that little fact, they're actually law-abiding citizens.
Well, yeah. I mean, they're taxpayers, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they're taxpayers.
Sergeant Jim, by the way, agrees with you, JJ. I don't know if you saw the cop, 20-year retired cop, former narcotics detective here. You guys are spot on. I work Mexican gangs importing dope. They are beyond terrorists. So
yeah. They're savages.
One example after another. Jeff, just to reel in segment one before we go into segment two, I want to hear your thoughts on, JJ started to touch on it, how these cartels and, Latin gangs, whatever you want to call them, have become very, very opportunistic in recent years.
Oh, yeah.
And if it makes sense on a transactional level, like transaction, each one being considered individual, they will work together now.
Oh yeah, sure. You think about the Zetas, which was a group of terrorists on the border, across from Juarez and along the Mexican border down in Nuevo Laredo down there. Well, another gang came in and kind of took over, but they didn't kill them; they just absorbed them. And it's okay now. You're part of us now. Because that's your choice. We'll kill you and take your territory, or we'll let you join our gang. You're subservient to us, but we'll let you run your turf and still do your shit, but you got to kick back up to us. It's like the mafia say, I need my taste. But they will also, it's like JJ was saying that the narcos traffickers look down on the human traffickers. Well, and then when the border was opening up, they're going, well, hell, we can make money on both sides of this.
Mm-hmm.
So they made money on both sides. Tren de Aragua was making money on human trafficking. Could they have sold drugs? Yeah, but they're bumping into somebody else's territory when they do that, and they risk a turf war. So they adjust, and they go to human trafficking. And then the cartels in Mexico go, well, hell, we can make money on this. We know how to smuggle shit. We'll just smuggle people instead. No one's going to stop us at the border because Biden's an idiot. So that's just that much more profit for us. I mean, they were bootlegging in the 20s and 30s when we had prohibition. They weren't called cartels then, but they saw it. They saw an opportunity. They took it.
Well, and I mean, nobody knows better than JJ on this, but we've covered it numerous times. There's way more money to be made in child sex trafficking than there is in drugs. JJ, how much do they make on average off of, somebody they're trafficking? Granted, in a few years, they either commit suicide or they kill them, but what do they make each year off of them on average?
On average, about $250,000
Dang.
per person, and they just rape them to death. So, and Jeff is completely right. The narco smugglers came over and they took over the human smuggling. They just took it over. Why? Because Biden removed the impediment, the obstacle, and the obstacle was the Border Patrol and then the housing and transporting people. That's dirty, right? People have to go to the bathroom. People have to eat. You have to listen to them bitch and moan and cry, and you worry about them making a noise. And how are you going to stack them like you can stack, cocaine and heroin? You can't. Right. So it's hard. So what happened under Joe Biden's tenure is he removed that entire transportation piece. The human smugglers, who are now the narco smugglers, took over and dropped the kids, literally pushed them across the fence with lanyards on them or stapled pieces of plastic to their post-it note onto their chest that would say, "My name is so-and-so. I'm going to this address, and this is the phone number." We, the Border Patrol, would put them in our database, turn them over to the HHS, which would sideswipe them over to the third party, all the NGOs, Catholic Charities, Jewish Family Services, Lutheran Family Services, and those NGOs, those other narco and human smugglers called the religious NGOs, would literally call the number on the kid's chest and say, "Are you waiting for little Jose from Guatemala?" "Absolutely." "Well, you hang tight. We're going to have somebody fly him to you, and he'll be there tomorrow." And then little Juan would be transported back to the cartels, and little Juan would do tricks at 5 years old, anywhere from 10 to 20 times a day, anally raped, orally raped, just be brutalized, drugged up, destroyed, and they would rape him for a year or so, and then he would die. Welcome to America. That's what our government did. And it's 550,000 known. And they came out yesterday with this big deal with DHS Mullen. We've found 146,000 of them. That's wonderful. We're at year and a half. There's 550,000 in the database. And I could tell you, I could triple that number that came across the border. We're failing, and we have a moral obligation to find every one of these children, and we will not find them because we don't have the wherewithal, we don't have the courage, and we really don't want to know what our country does to little kids, period.
So I say it's pretty safe that JJ is the ray of sunshine tonight. Nobody's even come close to him. If you agree with me, JJ, once again.
You got me all worked up, man. I know you go to liberal causes, Chris, because that's how you're built. And you bring in your liberal friends to just get me amped up. I know you do it.
Well, listen, it's an honor to be bestowed the ray of sunshine. If you agree with me, put a 1 in the live chat that JJ is tonight's ray of sunshine.
Oh gosh.
But we're gonna pivot into the second segment here. Just give me a second to cue it up here. So it's titled Early Warning Indicators, Reading Cartel Governance Consolidation at the Neighborhood Level. The 7 early warning indicators of cartel consolidation: out-of-state vehicles on regular schedules, local criminals deferring to outside leadership, unsolicited protection or supply offers, informal dispute resolution, selective violence against resistors, corridor intensification, and community leadership going quiet. And individually explainable, but collectively it becomes a diagnostic essentially. Recognizing the indicators requires a baseline of what normal looks like, a trusted observer network that aggregates observations into patterns. And I've spoken this many times as far as recording what looks normal in your neighborhood, because most of the time people have their face buried in their weapon of mass distraction and they're not paying attention. And when you recognize those patterns, you write the patterns down, and then bad things really do happen. You have a point of reference to compare it to. So the window between those first indicators and let's call it completed consolidation, that's the most, valuable, most time limited window that communities have, because once that consolidation happens, reversing it and going back the other way is probably not going to happen. So Jeff, as I mentioned, I'm going to come to you first, then I'm coming right to you, Randy. Jeff, walk through the early warning indicators. Like, what do you see first when cartels and these gangs are moving in? What occurs second? And what does the sequence of events kind of tell you as far as the consolidation of power amongst the bad guys?
Well, they treat it like a military operation. First thing you do is you have to gather intel. You're not going to just walk into a neighborhood or walk into a town and take it over. You've got to know what's there, who's a potential threat, who isn't. And so it's going to be recon. They're going to send people in. They're going to kind of maybe ask questions. Maybe they'll send their women in because people tend to be more disarmed when dealing with females, especially men. And they will, and, biker gangs have done the same thing. They'd send their biker girls in somewhere and they would collect information more than the men, because the men look like bikers. They're big, scary guys. They're all tatted up. They're wearing leathers. So they send the girls in. Cartels can do the exact same thing. So the first thing you do is you gather intel. And then you identify potential threats. And if you want to take over, and leadership, and if you want to take over a town or a community or a neighborhood, if there's one or two people that you think are going to stand in your way, kill them first.
It sounds, insane, but you're right. It's exactly how it goes down. So, Randy, I want to get your thoughts on people being kind of cued into observing this stuff happen, like vehicles in their neighborhood that don't belong in their neighborhood, people in their neighborhood that don't belong in their neighborhood. Just give us some general operational, let's call it SOPs to be looking out for this shit.
Well, they've probably already done it. That's the sad truth of the matter. But if we had some sort of societal collapse, and there wasn't a lot of communication, maybe the power grid's gone down and law enforcement is non-existent, what you're going to see is groups of people, initially what you would see is maybe just like we saw on the news when ISIS started taking over Iraq and parts of Syria, right? What was the first thing they did? Started cruising around in trucks with all these armed guys in the back and their black flags and all that kind of stuff. And, they probably drove around first and got a good feel of it. And then they just decided, okay, this is ours. And they'll come in and take it over. And usually what happens then in that moment is, they're going to make some examples that, for whatever reason, if you're in that neighborhood and you do something they don't like, certainly in the very beginning, it's not going to end well for you. And that's, they're going to make examples out of folks and be very violent to basically effectively put everybody else in line. But I would say that what you will see is, like you said, vehicles and people that are in your neighborhood that you don't know, and certainly cruising around and not at a fast speed, but they're clearly driving around, looking around, taking notes, basically. That's what you're going to see the first part. And then it'll probably be more of them, right? More of them to actually come in and secure that location. And so, what you should be looking for is, like you said, it's people and vehicles and activities that aren't normal in your neighborhood, because that's going to be your first indication that someone else is there. And then, once the criminal activity starts, they won't need us to tell them what to look for.
Yeah. So, JJ, safe to say that profiling works?
Profiling does work. That's absurd to say law enforcement is not profiling. Do you know that we won a Supreme Court case too that said that Border Patrol can use he's a Hispanic male. That's of course. I work on the border. I'm not I mean, during Joe Biden's years, it was everybody under the sun. But for my entire career, it was brown people. There was occasionally crazy Asian guy that would come, or some Russians, but those were exotics. It was all Central American savages and Mexicans and some people from South America. And that's part of our reasonable suspicion. That's part of my totality of what I see. Look, man, I can spot illegal alien from a mile away. At the same time, I can tell you if that guy's got a card, he's got some kind of legal status. I can just tell by the way they walk, the way their clothes they wear, how their hair is. Just they stand out. They got like red beacons on their head. I know them from a mile away. So profiling works. You know what you're looking for, then that's what you go for.
Yeah,
period.
Walks like a duck, quacks like a duck. It's a duck. So, JJ, before I go back to Jeff, I want to hear your experience and thoughts on how these cartels and gangs, I think part of their SOP for a long, long time has been to seek out, people who maybe are in distress financially or otherwise, and they make some sort of unsolicited offer to them to basically initially maybe gain their loyalty. And then over time, it's not just loyalty, it's straight up fear. But is that as common as it's made out to be?
I don't see that. I just see they're savages. This is just, and I like to ask Randy this. I mean, different people, but the same kind of mentality. It's just by force. I mean, the idea that they're not animals is you're making a mistake, right? Will there be some goodwill, like meaning, hey, we'll help you. Okay, here's food, here's protection. Yeah, but it's all at a cost. But they're going to come in with guns blazing. They're just going to take it over. That's what they do. Why would you stop tactics that are effective, right? I mean, I don't know, Randy, did you see that in the Middle East? Did you see we're going to help you, or did you see the initial, hey, we are physically more powerful you, we own this now, and everyone goes, okay, and just goes along?
Well, when the criminals took over, and certainly the larger organizations, like when we're following around dudes that are the leading 50-man, cells, yeah, we saw exactly that. The reality is they weren't much different. They were very savage, and it wasn't just Americans that we were killing through combat, through small arms, but predominantly through IEDs and EFPs, explosives. That's how they killed a lot of Americans. But these people were going around killing a bunch of Iraqis too. Certainly if they thought they were working with the Americans of any kind or for any reason. And man, they would make a public statement about that because there were bodies that got dropped in the Tigris River, right? I don't know who was doing that, but I suspect it wasn't them, right? Because these guys, if it was an Iraqi that they killed and tortured, everybody saw them when they woke up the next morning because they threw them in the middle of the street in their own neighborhood. And to tell, man, not only did they drill into all their joints and into their head with drills, they cut pieces off, they electrocuted, they burned. It was horrific, some of the things that they did to these folks, and then just left them in the street. So we saw that same type of activity because, unfortunately, whether it be South America or the Middle East, when it comes down to that barbaric level, certainly in lands that have great poverty, it is violent and it's brutal.
Yep.
By the way, JJ, if you noticed, the Brotox has kicked in on Randy. I mean, he looks.
That's right.
Randy has about 10 filters on that computer.
That's right. That's right.
It's not just.
Oh my God. So Jeff, do me a favor, pick up where Randy left off. So Randy was in Iraq, you were in Afghanistan. Did you see similar stuff happen in Afghanistan?
Well, we had more organized factions. We had the 𝐬𝐮 and the Jamiats, two kind of quasi-political groups. They were both into drug smuggling, don't get me wrong. They did heroin and all that. But they were more organized. And so they would fight amongst each other, and they'd kill a couple of guys here and a couple of guys there. But they didn't go through and wholesale terrorize the population. It was generally fighting among soldiers. And and as far as the cartels doing, humanitarian or egalitarian things, they did and they do, but it's more in their own backyard. It's Pablo Escobar he would sponsor soccer teams, he would go to schools, he would give money to the church, local churches and charities and things like that. And his motive behind that wasn't, I want to be a nice guy or I want to be loved. It was, if the local population where I live in my home base, if they're on my side, it makes it easier for me to function outside. I don't have to cover my six as much. Same thing with Al Capone in Chicago in the 20s and 30s. He did soup kitchens and he was feeding the starving and all this stuff. What it was, then it creates essentially a whole neighborhood full of snitches that if the cops come in and try and do something, they're going to say, hey, Al, we've got some feds over here. They just rented an apartment. It was like a snitch line for them. And it was cheap because, Al Capone, okay, yeah, you fund a few soup kitchens. It's not that big a deal. Pablo Escobar had so much money, he was burying it in barrels out in the field and would forget where it was. And he would write off a certain percentage of it to loss due to mold, mildew, and rodents eating the cash. Literally. So for him to drop $5 million on some charity for Medellin, yeah, no big deal. That was a rounding error. I mean, they were counting their money by weighing it.
That's great.
Yeah, wasn't he the one? Really, he was the first one that had free money. This was before IT and all that, and all these billionaires. You got to realize, even when he was doing that, man, somebody to make $100 million was a big deal. Today. And then, from what I heard, and it was probably more, I think during the height of Pablo Escobar's days, what I heard, he was paying over $55 million a month in bribes.
Yeah.
Just in bribes.
Police, judges, politicians.
I'd be surprised if it wasn't higher than that, to be quite honest with you.
55 million.
Yeah.
Big numbers.
They're taking in billions.
Yep.
Cost of doing business.
Yeah, exactly. So it's been a while since we've done the math on this, but if you had $1 million, you converted it to 1 million seconds, that's 11 days of time. If you had $1 billion and you converted it to 1 billion seconds, you have approximately 33 years of time. If you had $1 trillion and you converted it to seconds, it's 33,000 years. I mean, you're talking... The most of us can't comprehend the difference between 1 million, a billion, and a trillion. It gets so astronomical. JJ, just to wrap up segment number 2, advice for Americans in the suburbs in particular, not the inner cities, but the suburbs. What should they be on the lookout for? What's worth reporting to local authorities? What's not worth reporting?
Well, if the cartels are moving in, your government has already fallen, right? I would think that. What's law enforcement going to do? So let's say the cartels move in to. Let me give you a real life example. Okay, Oklahoma, red state, absolute red state. The Chinese nationals, illegal aliens, have over 3,000 to 5,000 marijuana grows in Oklahoma, and they know it, and they won't do anything about it. Maine, blue Maine, has thousands of known marijuana houses, right? Run by Chinese national illegal aliens. They know it. They won't do anything. Why? Why won't they do anything? Because who's going to go do it? What law enforcement is going to go up there with our pea shooters and going to go take down 3,000 houses in Oklahoma and 3,000 houses in Maine? Not going to happen. They've already won. I don't know if people understand this, that they've already laid the groundwork and they're winning. They're just winning. Entire communities in California in the hills are taken over by drug smugglers, and they're cultivating marijuana fields, and they're siphoning out water, and they're destroying the landscape, and no one does anything. This is America. We don't do anything because there's not enough cops. Let me just give you a rough estimate so people understand how dire this situation is. 2018, not 1818 or 1918, 2018, we had 1.2 million law enforcement officers in America. 2026, 8 years later, we're at about 650,000. It's done. It's done. And we could say blackpilling. We can do all this. This is all documented. I documented in my books. There are reporters that I really respect and have friendships with, have literally been on the ground documenting the illegal alien marijuana grows. And let me just finish with this so you understand how big the cartel problem is. Why are the Chinese in the marijuana grow and transportation and distribution in America? Why are they focused on that? Well, because they're generating, and this is conservative, tens of billions of dollars a year. Why is that important? Because the Chinese PLA army is here in America. And how do they fund it? How do they fund it? They fund it through the marijuana grows, because China doesn't have to worry about electronic transfers and being traced and all that. No, this is straight liquid cash, cold hard cash. So they are they're created the way they make money and fund their nefarious businesses in America. We brought in 200,000 PLA soldiers under Joe Biden. They're here. We can stick our head in the sands and act like it's never going to happen, but let's all get real. This is what's happening in America today.
So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, JJ, 100%. No ifs, ands, or buts. Ray of Sunshine Award for tonight. And, and let's you gotta,
it's not even close.
No.
You know what? Forget it. Forget it. I'm tired of coming on liberal podcasts like this with you guys. Randy is a liberal too.
Can't
Jeff,
we just get along?
You got to
our strength.
Yeah, you got to address this one, JJ. So from Love DIY 911, JJ needs to go before Congress and tell them to get their heads out of their asses.
No.
What happened last time you did that? And what did you say after that as far as ever going back to D.C. and addressing Congress again?
I sat there in front of Congress, and a fat Guatemalan illegal alien named Dalia Ramirez, who admitted openly in Congress that her mother crossed the border illegally, pregnant with her, so she's an illegal alien. And then I got told that I'm a white nationalist and I'm a horrible person. I came out and I called my wife and I said, if I ever get asked to do this again, and I even contemplated, I want you to pull a bullet in the back of my head. There's no way I'm going in front of those morons. Those are the dumbest people on planet Earth. Both sides. The gutless white Republican men, they didn't even know what the hell they were talking about. And I'll tell you who the greatest disappointment to me is that guy from Louisiana. What's his name? The big
Kennedy?
bad. No, he's disgusting too. But what's the congressman's name? Oh man, I forgot. He's
Encyclopedia MD.
Jeff,
When I know there is Kennedy. He's a senator, though.
Who's the congressman? He was a sheriff down in Plaquemines Parish in Louisiana, and he acts like he's a real tough guy.
Clay
Higgins.
Clay Higgins, yeah.
Clay Higgins is a piece of trash. He's gutless. He's held at least a half a dozen child sex trafficking congressional hearings, has done nothing. You know what his question was to me? He came up to me after the congressional hearing, and I thought, okay, here's a guy that's in law enforcement that's going to say, hey, JJ, let's go into my office. Let's talk about this. You know what his question was to me? I don't know if I ever told you this.
What did you get, Botox?
Besides that was the second question. You know what? I'm leaving. I'll finish my thing. Chris, know what he asked me? Do you want to take my picture? Do you want to take a picture with me?
It's like, no.
I was like, God, dude, you're disgusting. You're embarrassing. You know? I wanted to punch him as much as I wanted to punch Jeff right then when he said something about my Botox. But
Bro,
You just should have countered JJ and said, hey, look, if you want my autograph, you can just ask for it. You don't have to pretend to see if I want a picture with you.
Those are the dumbest people in our society. They are the dumbest people in our society. I had a black congresswoman ask me, she goes, I need to ask you a question. And I was just like, dear God. I mean, am I on candid camera? Do you need to ask me something? This was the same woman I saw across the street going to the congressional hearing in a skin tight black leotard. And I thought, what's hookers doing walking around at noon? And then that hooker walks into the congressional hearing and I'm like, oh dear God. And then I see her walk up to the dais and I went, oh dear God, that's a congresswoman. That hooker is a congresswoman. And that's my ray of sunshine for everybody as I leave for the week.
Well, we used to have pastorals, right, for the congressmen and the senators. I guess now they have prostitutes.
Yeah,
well,
they've always had the prostitutes.
My Clay Travis moment was when they said, "Here, take a picture with Director Comey." Oh my God. I have the picture. I've never put it up, and I'm like, well, I need to buy a dartboard now. So
Unbelievable.
JJ, did you catch the attorney in Dallas this week?
Oh,
the black lady who went on a rant and she kept saying axe this, axe that.
Well, she's lost her law license. That's
my instant response was, can you imagine hiring an attorney who's incapable of saying the word ask?
You know, the second thing I want to ask all the blacks in America
time out. You want to ask a question?
I want to ask a question.
Right.
I just would like to. My first request is, could you please stop killing us? That's the first one. And the second one is, if you're going to blame us for everything, can you please use proper grammar so that I may fully understand what the hell you're saying? Because I do not understand any of that language that you're saying. It's abysmal what's happened to America. Unbelievable. Happy Friday, everybody. Thanks, Chris.
Good job, Ray of Sunshine. Don't go anywhere. We've still got segment 3 to wrap up here.
Bye.
We'll talk to you soon.
See you later, liberals.
Oh my God, he cracks me up. All right, moving into segment number 3, the escalation arc. What comes after the vacuum fills? So the tribute system that follows consolidation doesn't begin as extortion. It begins as voluntary transactions that are individually rational but collectively catastrophic, creating self-reinforcing dependency that makes withdrawal from the second payment cycle no longer a free choice once the first is accepted. It's that dirty money thing that Jeff mentioned, especially with high caliber guys like Escobar. The communities most vulnerable to the full escalation arc will not be the least prepared materially. They'll be the ones that already lost their social cohesion, legitimate leadership, and capacity for collective action in the psychological collapse arc, confirming that the inner life of the household and community is the foundational variable the entire arc depends on. The faith communities that maintain visible active engagement, refuse to accommodate criminal authority, will be both the most durable sources of resistance and the most predictable targets for co-optation. So co-opted, right? And the investment in those communities that is possible today will be substantially harder to make after consolidation of these criminal elements is complete. So with that being said, going directly to Encyclopedia MD with the first question. Jeff, walk us through the tribute system and the escalation sequence. How's it start? How's it develop? What's it look like when they reach their end game?
Well, in Latin America, the tribute system for the gangs isn't that much different than the tribute system for the government, to be honest. You don't go to, if you want a phone, you don't just go down to the phone company and say, I need a phone. You've got to bribe somebody somewhere. And if you want, you want permission to build a house, you have to bribe somebody to get a building permit. Well, now replace government with cartel. And instead of building permit, it is, if you want to open a shop, you've got to kick back to them, especially a protection racket. And what they're doing is they're offering you, quote unquote, protection, basically from them, in exchange for money, obedience, maybe, your kids, getting your boys to join the cartel to be runners or smugglers or soldiers or whatever. And so the people of the community feel almost like the cartel is just a heavy-handed local government, which is they have to pay tax to the cartel like they pay tax to the government just to get by every day. But what happens if you get two cartels fighting for territory, like say Cartel A has a territory, and Cartel B comes in and says, I want to take that area over. It's going to be lucrative. It's on my smuggling route, whatever it is. What they have to do is go in and undermine that protection. So how do they do that? They go in and kill a bunch of people. And then they go to them and say, hey, all that protection money you're paying to Cartel A hadn't done you any good, has it? 30 people got killed last week. If you pay us instead, we'll protect you. Now, they're probably the same ones who killed the 30 people last week. If I can guarantee you, they're the same people who killed the 30 folks last week. They may not admit to it. But what then you got the people having to choose between one son of a bitch and another. And if the first group can't come in and kick the second group out, the people will go with the second group. But they're the ones that suffer. They're the ones that get killed. They're the ones that have to pay. And it's really, it's a shame that people have to choose, who's going to beat them. You get to choose your executioner. Oh, lucky me. It's a horrible situation. But once they're in because they effectively, they are the authority. They are the police.
Yeah. So Randy, just work with me here. Imagine that we have some sort of, massive economic collapse, and all of these cartels that are established across the country, gangs as well, they decide that it's go time. This is their chance to, grasp the ring of power. What communities, especially from a faith perspective, do you think would be able to repel and resist versus those that don't stand a chance and they're just going to get bulldozed?
That's an interesting question. I would tend to say that if you're further out in the middle of nowhere, maybe, that would be safer. The cities definitely, and where there are freeways. Why? Because you got to move your product and the money. Got to get that money back. So I would think that, they're going to secure those zones for sure. The outer lying areas don't matter so much. I believe that was where safety really lies because, for one, again, it's out there and there's nothing out there. So generally, there's no value to it. So I would say assume that it's going to be more of your bigger cities. And it doesn't matter what state it is. It's going to be your bigger cities. And of course, with those those connecting freeways, and now, as we know, rivers.
So that's interesting that you went there. I just pulled a number up while you were speaking, just to have some sort of point of reference. And there's a range, so I'm not giving, empirical numbers here, but it looks like the percentage of Americans in urban centers who are Christian is somewhere in the low to mid 60s. But when you go to rural locations, it's pretty much 80%. Which that's a pretty big jump when you think in percentages. Although I'll be honest, I was surprised that it was even in the 60s in urban America.
Yeah, I would be surprised by that too. I'd have to see how they came up with that number because that's rather large for some of the bigger cities that I don't know if they're 60% or not.
So let's just roll with it. Let's assume that they were, Randy.
Yeah.
Do you reckon that the cartels would go after those communities, avoid those communities, or just treat them like everybody else? Are they a target or not? Because I read some stuff that some people were saying if it's a community that's hardcore Christian and it's known that, think Burleson, Texas, just to throw a dart at the map sort of thing, right? I would posit that 95+% of the people who live in Burleson are Christians, right? So some of the stuff that I read researching for this episode basically said that the cartels would avoid those types of communities because it would be too hard to overcome the cohesion. But then I read people on the other end of the spectrum who said, no, that's exactly who the cartels would go after. I think I'm in the first bucket more so than the second bucket. What do you think?
Well, we know it's written in the Bible, so at some point this is going to happen. And we see the whole world mounting up against Israel at this point, including many people in this country, which we've never experienced quite to this level before, the Jew hating. And so I would say, we know the Christians are next and white people. And we already now, including with this, event that just happened with the Metcalfs and the Carmelos, you see a good portion of the black community that are clearly racist and are now upset, and they just will not, for one, facts and truth don't matter. They're going to go off what they believe. But now they're, as we mentioned earlier, they're calling for, we need to go after white people. Let's help take this country down. So, at some point, the whole world's going to turn that way. Now, I think if it happened today, would that be the cartel's first targets? But sooner or later, that's going to be kind of a popular thing to do. And at that point, and then again, at some point, they're going to feel pretty secure where they're at. I have no doubt, because it's, and then they will feel the need to branch out, or, maybe they just get, we want to go kill some folks. How blood, thirst, and lust is a real thing. So, but I would assume at some point they will, because again, as I said, it's in the Bible that they're going to come after Christians at some point.
Yeah.
And then I think the cartels will. But again, as I said, I don't think it'll be right away. But if it becomes popular, I think so.
Well, I think if you look, though, at a global level right now, you could make the argument that they're already coming after Christians.
You could. Yes, I would agree with that.
Just look at Nigeria, for example. Look at the Muslim Brotherhood mosques, these forward operating bases that are defiant. They publicly state they're here to wipe us out, right?
Yeah.
Encyclopedia MD, I get a question just for you, specifically for you. Is there any historical example of a community, not in America, but say Central or South America, that is successfully resisted cartels coming into their community, or they've just steamrolled everybody?
Well, people have, but it's only because the cartels didn't care. Cartels are businesses. They're not going to go take over a town for no reason if there's not a reason for them to do it. I mean, if there's not a financial, logistical objective that they need to meet. The only way I would see them going into a town in the middle of freaking nowhere, for example, to steamroller it, is if the town had made a name for itself by standing up to them. Then they'd have to go in, wipe them out to send a message to everybody else. That can happen as well. But you think about, you go back in history, you think about Masada. Masada was the fortress, an ancient fortress in Israel, where some Jewish rebels retreated to get away from the Romans. Well, there were a small group, and they weren't capable of really challenging the Roman Empire at all. I mean, I don't know if there were, 40, 50, 60 people. And they were out on this fortress that was in the middle of the freaking desert. But the Romans had to send a message. And so they sent a legion to wipe them out. And it took them a long time. The fortress was damn near impenetrable. So what the Romans did is they built this huge ramp. I mean, like 1,000 feet long, 200 or 300 feet high. So they could roll siege weapons up and attack the walls. And they did. And they took this thing, and then everybody inside ended up committing suicide before the Romans could get there. And that ramp is still there today. It's still a feature of the mountain. And the amount of manpower and treasure the Romans spent to take out these, 40, 50, 60 people is mind-boggling. You think about it. Would we send a division to go kill 40 guys? No. And there are women and children in this group too. But they had to send a message, and the message was, you can't defy us. You can't defy Rome. If it becomes too well known that someone's defying the cartels, will they do that? Yeah. They do it to officials all the time. Someone stands up to the cartels, they kill them. But if you have a community that's standing up, they'll probably kill them too, if they deem that they're afraid it's going to become contagious.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, it's crazy. I didn't even, I'd known in the past, but I've forgotten. I didn't realize a Roman legion was 5,000 plus men. I mean, that's a force to contend with.
I got to go there. October 7th happened. I was in Israel the August right before that. I was there 30 days before it happened in some of the same areas. And we got to go down there. In fact, it's 1,400 feet up and the Dead Sea is at the bottom. And as Jeff said, that ramp is the dirt ramp they built that took months and months is still there to this day. And so it's a very inspiring story, mainly because there was a Jew uprising and the Romans went around for 3 years and conquered all of them and killed off all the resistance. And it was more than 40 or 50. It was like 1,000 people that ended up at the top of this place. And they were the last holdouts. But as Jeff mentioned, the Romans couldn't allow that to stay. They had to go root them out. So it took months to build this ramp. And as they got closer, when the Israelites that were up there saw that probably in the next day or two, the ramp was going to be high enough for them to kill over, it's as Jeff said. They first killed their women, their wives, and their children, and then they killed each other to the last man who fell on his sword. And we know that they did do that and it wasn't because they were starving or anything else, because when archaeologists went up there here, I think in the 70s, basically they found a lot of the fruit and food that these people still had stored. Now, of course, it wasn't good anymore, but they found berries, they found all kinds of stuff and clothes. So the reality is, they picked freedom over being conquered or killed or put into slavery by the Romans, who definitely made it to the top. And when they got up there, they were all dead. So and again, it's 1,400 feet up. It's amazing because there's actually a switchback trail that you can walk that takes several hours if you want to walk up the front side. But of course, you can't get a whole army up that way. And if they came up one at a time, well, you would just sit there and keep smoking them until the whole legion was gone. So that's why they went around the backside and built this huge ramp. And again, as Jeff mentioned, it's still there to this day. I have the book back here somewhere behind me that I brought back from that actual location. Very, very cool site. Because we took the cable car. Thank goodness. We did not walk all the way up. There's now a cable car that will take you to the top. And this was built by Herod. King Herod was the guy who built this palace. And he lived, basically, he reigned for 33 years for most. He died when Jesus was 4. But he was the one in charge before Jesus. And, when we got up there, this man, back that far in time in history, had steam tile in the bottom of his little steam room that he had up there in that palace. And that's a pretty credible story because, of course, that was, again, before Jesus was born, but somehow he had heated tiles in his bathroom.
Amazing. I knew you were there. It slipped my memory. So appreciate you adding that in at this particular point. So the next episode of the America Under Siege series is going to be next Wednesday. And we're actually going to dive a little bit deeper into this, tribute system that the cartels and others have used for years. A little bit of a change for the schedule next week. Monday, Tuesdays from now on will be my reacts videos, where I'm either by myself reacting to something that's at the top of the news cycle or have one guest with me, sort of thing. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday will be with the panel. So JJ Carroll will be with Randy, Jeff, and I. Mike Glover will be with us. Don Vandergriff will be with us. Don was with us this week. Randy,
was he? Sweet.
Yeah,
I got an announcement. Well, I'll tell you, we need to get with JJ because Father Duck said he would donate some money if JJ ran for office for president.
Yeah, I know. He told me that as well.
We got to tell him. We got to tell JJ.
All joking aside, I got to give a shout out to Father Duck. He's an amazing member of our community. The guy's got a huge, huge heart. We are all blessed that we have crossed paths with him in this lifetime. He's truly a guardian angel of sorts, as well as, we have a number of people in our community. Manly's another one. JP's another one. These are really, really great, dedicated people. So I don't want to ruin going into next Wednesday's episode on the tribute stuff. So what I want to do is just move ahead into the X, identifying the X and advice for the audience. So the X is essentially believing that cartel and gang territorial control is like a border state problem. We're all border states now, right? We learned that after 4 years of being invaded. So there's this thought like it could never happen to me, right? It can never happen to me. It's always going to happen to somebody else. I lived the first 26 years of my life that way until I got hit in the face with a snowmobile track at about 100 miles an hour and destroyed the vision of my left eye and messed my face up and so on and so forth. And then I became acutely aware that bad things don't just happen to other people. And then I had a bunch of subsequent wrecks after that, none of which were my fault. So point being is this, maybe call it the head in the sand phenomena, that it can't happen in your community. That's the X. That's believing that it'll never happen in your neighborhood. It can't happen in your neighborhood, so on and so forth. So I put together a few things, guys. I'll come to you first, Jeff. I think it would behoove people to map the criminal network geography in your area. There's databases out there that you can access that say, hey, in this particular area, you got to look out for this group, and this one, you got to look out for that group. And I mean, tell us where you can find that information, and comment on the importance of knowing what's in your backyard, especially if we lose access to Encyclopedia MD.
There are various sites. I can't remember the one that's around here. Almost every community or every region will have, and the police update crime statistics, and a lot of them will have a map, and they'll show different crimes, and you click on it and it'll give you the detail. I wish I could remember the name of it. We have one that also has sexual predators, where people who have been released and they're living in the community. Man, they don't necessarily give it. Well, actually, this one I think did give the names. Names, address, puts a pin so you can see what they're there, what they were convicted of, etc. And when it comes to gang activity, if they don't identify gang activity specifically as gang activity, the type of crime will give you a big ass clue. Drive-by shootings, almost always gang activity. You don't find too many people who rob houses just drive by and start shooting places up. Other one is drug dealing. Not possession. Someone gets busted for possession, that you can get pulled over and get busted for possession. But people who get busted for, intent to distribute, that's a bigger fish. That a lot of times that's gang related as well, or at least some sort of organized crime related. So if they don't explain specifically, you can use a little common sense to look at the statistics and see, okay, is that likely gang activity or not? The other one is look for clusters where, is there a part of your town or your region where there's a big cluster of similar crimes, similar incidents? Gangbangers, not to sound stereotypical, tend to shoot each other where they live, which is the hood. So if you see an area that has, 20, drive-by shootings, even if people aren't hit, okay, that's a gang area, because one gang is there trying to shoot the other gang that's there. So that also tells you where the hell to stay away from. But those sites are invaluable. I mean, especially if you're moving into an area, check those things out before you ever move in, because an area may look good, but it has high crime.
Well, that's interesting that you would mention that, because it's been, I don't know, probably 10 years almost that Zillow, Redfin, and all the other sites removed crime statistics because it was, it was unfair. It was casting these communities in the wrong light.
And yeah,
exactly.
It is out there. You can find it a lot of times. The police departments will actually maintain it.
Hey, so check this one out. I only got the free version, but it's called Citizen app, right?
I've got it.
And you see, that's all the crimes that are in Dallas Fort Worth area right now. That's a lot, or wrecks and all kinds of stuff. The very cool thing, this thing told me yesterday. Now I had a VA appointment, and I had to go to the Dallas VA, which I hate to do because it's an hour and a half drive. But this thing literally told me when I walked past a guy and gave me his name and face and everything that he was he was on the sexual registered list or whatever it is, And I was like, whoa. Said you came within less than 100 yards of this guy.
And let's be honest. I mean, when you're on the bro talks and you look as good as you do, you got to be worried about these things, like. So
I need to know where those sexual predators are.
Yes, you do. So the better part of 20 years ago, we lived in a gated community in Daytona called Pelican Bay. You can look it up. It is a huge development where they built the first stage, and then the guy went bankrupt. They built the second stage, and I want to say there's around 1,800 homes in there, and it's really a beautiful spot. And there had been one murder in Pelican Bay since it was started in, I think, 1982, right? And somebody was telling me this, one of the neighbors. So when I went to look it up, I found that if you went to Google Maps back then, you can't do this anymore, and you typed in murders near me, it would pop up bubbles. And you could even put time frames in, like murders near me in the past 5 years, 10 years, or whatever. So there's a reason that those of us who live in Central Florida refer to Daytona Beach as Dirtona. It's the most violent city in the country with a population under 100,000 now. Its population's 70K, give or take, sort of thing. So I punched in murders near me, whatever the time frame was, and everything north, south, and east of me, west, of course, went to the interstate, lit up with a bazillion red bubbles. But of course, we can't have that information anymore because it might
scare people up. When you think about, I guarantee, I've worked in Dallas. I've picked them up. It's significant.
Well, there was a young couple. Did you catch this, Randy? Earlier this week, there was a young couple that were assaulted in Oak Cliff, a white family. Yep. And on the one hand, I felt bad for them because they got jumped by this gang of black teens. On the other hand, we knew 30 years ago, you don't go into Oak Cliff as a white person after dark. And this was after dark, and they're walking down the street. So it's not like
certainly
it's
in this day and time.
Hell yeah.
Crazy. Well, I'll back that up because in 1988, I was still on an ambulance. And we also had the ME contract at the ambulance service that I worked at. And it's a Friday or Saturday night, and we get a call that's over by the VA that I just talked about. And it's definitely in the hood. And we get there, and I pull up, and there's an apartment complex, and we pull into the parking lot. It's one of those, there's a little parking lot in the front that didn't go all the way through. It was just a parking lot there, and the buildings are on the side. Well, the two Dallas cop cars were sitting there with their lights on, and I mean headlights. The beacons weren't going, but the doors were open. There was nobody there, and they were parked right next to this little shed that was obviously for the security guard. And really, it was just a roof in case it was raining. And when we didn't know where they were because they were gone. I'll skip the first part, but as I thought I knew where he was, that wasn't correct. I came back to the ambulance, and all of a sudden, here he came around, and we knew it was the guard because he was a pretty big dude. And then he had a 870 pump 12-gauge shotgun holding it over his shoulder like this. And again, 1988, the first thing this guy says, "Hey, y'all are both white." We're like, "Yes." He goes, "You know they don't like white people around here, right?" I'm like, "Yes, we do know that." And he said, "What's wrong with y'all? Y'all don't have any black people that work for you?" I said, "Yeah, we do, but they're not on duty right now. So this is it." And that was in 1988. That's literally the first thing that guy said to us. But he wasn't wrong either. He wasn't wrong.
Yeah, it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
So actually, Rand, I've got you queued up for the next part of getting off the X here. We've talked about this ad nauseum, but people need to get over their antisocial behavior and actually get to know your neighbors, because if and when, the fecal matter hits the oscillating device in your community, there's strength in numbers. Anybody who says they're fine all on their own, absolutely not the case. Because if enough people come and they want what you've got, or they want you out of your house, they will get you out of your house. Whether they smoke you out with burning, tires, or set your home on fire, whatever the case may be. Just give some general advice, Randy, on talking to neighbors that you've never talked to before, not coming off like you're, National Geographic wants to present us as cuckoo, preppers. How do you talk to people that aren't preppers to see if maybe you could convert them to become part of your people without coming off as a cuckoo prepper?
Well, really what you've got to do is interact with folks. And the funner you make it, whether it be you have a barbecue and you invite people over for your cook-off, or it's some other type of event that's in your neighborhood like mine, they actually have a person at the HOA that this is their job to have all these social events. But really, it's just talking to people and getting to know what, just normal things, really. It's normal conversation. You don't want to just hop right in. Hey, well, you got prepped. But, you can lead into questions of basically, well, I don't know, what would you do if this happened or that happened? You know what I mean? Ask them questions of that way. And then they may just tell you. That would be the easiest way. But again, you need to, I don't know that today's time you could just go knock on somebody's door and say, hey, I'm your neighbor, man. I just wanted to come over and talk. People think you're weird if you do that. But again, through the social events and maybe even throw some yourself, or, maybe you couldn't go knock around the door and say, hey, I had this idea. Maybe we have a street chili cook-off or whatever, you know what I mean? Something to that effect. And so that you can get next to people and then have normal conversations, because in those normal conversations, you will be able to ask questions like I just mentioned and others that won't necessarily, because you don't want to give up your hand. But, one of the things that Khalid had mentioned a while back, which is also a very good metric or indicator that you could look upon. So if you invited people over to your house for these cookouts, or you're going to have a big barbecue, the people that didn't bring anything, they just showed up.
Yeah.
Maybe those aren't the ones you want to be in your tightest circle. The people that actually brought stuff brought stuff and then helped and certainly stayed afterward and helped you clean it all up. Those are the kind of people that, that we're all looking for, right? Because really at the end of the day, we're all humans, and we're made to interact with each other. It's the same old adage from the very beginning. The reason, after God made Adam, he realized very soon, shortly thereafter, Adam was lonely, and that was a problem. So we are social beings. Our spirits are social. So get out there and meet the folks. Do it in a fun way so that you can then have normal conversations to then, divulge some of this information. Or at least, again, maybe you have a party and you have the conflicted game questions there and start throwing some of those out. We all know there are some of those moral questions in that game that definitely will kind of let you know where people are at and how they feel and who they really are.
This is true. This is really true. Let me throw something out there that, wasn't on purpose, that I just kind of stumbled across. So let me quickly show you this picture. So that picture is gold medal presentation at the 2014 World Powerlifting Championships. And those pants that I'm wearing, those real American Hulk Hogan pants, I've had them since 1987. And they're not the only ones I have. I have a bunch of them. I set an open class world record that year, by the way. I was 46 years old. I won with a 638-pound bench press at 198 pounds in the weigh-in. Where I'm going with this is that when we walk the dogs, Randy, and I wear those pants or my other ones that look like that, the neighbors, they wave at me. They come talk to us as we're walking the dogs. They compliment the dogs, so on and so forth. It's not that you don't have to wear a red hat that says "Make America Great Again" to advertise to your neighborhood that you're a real American, TM Randy Nance, and it works. I'm telling you that we've met a lot of neighbors just because of my patriotism. I love that stuff, right?
Well, I think people are starting to miss that. There was a period of time where people were like, you know what? It's really not that big of a deal. Now we're finding out it is.
Yeah, true story, true story. So I see Pastor Kessel backstage, and I have one more thing for the audience as far as, making sure that you're off the X if a criminal element comes into your neighborhood, and it's engaging your faith community. Pastor Kessel, I can see you. Give me a thumbs up if you're willing to come on stage and answer that before we do the prayer. All right, here we go. So let me get him on stage there. How you doing, Eric?
I'm doing well. How are you tonight?
Living the dream, one nightmare at a time, brother.
Yeah.
So So one of the things I put in the brief, and apologies, I should start sending you the brief on Fridays, is to engage your faith community, your local, church, etc. Speak to the importance of that and the resilience that comes from that.
What I did with my church, and I know very few churches actually do this, is to start asking questions about the what ifs. What if the grid goes down? What if the internet goes out for a long period of time? What if you don't have water for a long period of time, or your sewer goes out? It's always good to bring up these thoughts to get a preparedness mindset. And what if the law enforcement doesn't come? And the majority of my people, I have to say, do carry. And so I praise the Lord for that. And of course I do too. But anyway, I feel it's important that, what is the statement? To be forewarned is to be forearmed. And, I want our people to be forewarned because you don't know. We live in a fairly, the closest city is a very small city, about 5,000, 6,000 people. But we live on the outskirts of it, a little ways out. So that, we're kind of in the middle of a valley. But, I feel it's important that people know, and of course, those people know other people and can have conversations with their friends, family, whoever, about, what if, what would we do? How could we get through this? And I just think it's a great opportunity to get people involved. Not only, people say, well, I'll hold to my faith and whatever happens, happens. God always tells us that we need to be prepared, prepared for so many different things. And I think it's only wise that a good pastor, good preacher, is going to bring this forward to his congregation and let them know, and then have them, again, filter out through contacts as well. So.
Very well said. We're really, really fortunate. Our pastor is my brother-in-law. So he was a Seminole County sheriff for 30 years. He ended up coming back as a Volusia County sheriff because he runs the evidence department. He's like a global subject matter expert. But in between there, he did 12 years Navy intel. He ran the desk for Bayron. When he was a cop, though, he did everything. He was a crime scene investigator, SWAT team, you name it. We have like the ultimate pastor from that perspective, that if I told you how armed he is in our church, which is like in the middle of BFE, Florida, and no population 5,000, maybe population 150. We're really blessed to have him, though, as our pastor. He's a great leader. Everybody in the church would follow that man if the shit really hit the fan. So with that being said,
You're telling us he's got the shorty saw and the jacket down there.
I could neither confirm nor deny that, Randy.
No, it's a minigun.
I could tell you that anybody who tried to stir some shit up in our little small country Baptist church, they'd probably be having their funeral the same day at the church. So I got to share something that Randy and Jeff got to see previously. Let me get the pastor on. Sorry to leave him out. I'm not going to play this because there's a lot of profanity in this. But this song that this girl is singing, I'm going to share the link with y'all in the live chat, has gone viral. Now, I don't think she's the original person who wrote it, but there's all kinds of people, especially in Ireland, that are singing this because it speaks to recent events with the Sudanese invader trying to decapitate a guy with a knife in the street. And actually, my Monday episode, my Monday Reacts, is on that. We were going to have 𝐃𝐨𝐧'𝐭 sing and do this dance, but he chickened out. And I can say that now because he's left and he lives many states away from me, so I'm not afraid of him. Anyway, if you want a good laugh and you're not offended by profanity, check that out. I got to give a quick shout out to our friends at Carnival. They're our premier sponsor. So this is 100% American beef, chicken, and pork. No mRNA, no antibiotics, no histamines. These guys are hardcore Americans. Even the bags that they ship it in are made in America. The O2 absorbers in the bags are made in America. And I think Randy's probably got a logo up above his head there. Yep, there it is, up to his right. So if you go to carnivault.com, I'll put the link in the live chat when we close with closing video, and you sign up for a subscription. You lock in your price for your meat for 12 months. You can pause it a month here and there if you need to, but a bag of beef in January retailed for $36. It now retails for $47. Use the code EATMEAT to get 10% off, but their margins are less today than they were in January. So if you want to lock in your prices, do it, because my Tuesday Reacts is all about the food scarcity that's getting ever closer on the horizon. And I've also got to give a shout out to Greg Wasatch, Wasatch Wagyu, best jerky in the dang world. You know, read them and weep, boys. Greg actually texted me during tonight's broadcast that I've got another order coming. This is 100% Wagyu jerky. You can see how flexible it is because it's got a lot of good fats in it. It's an 18-month shelf life. I put it in our bags. I rotate it through go bag, bug out bags every 90 days. You don't have to do it that way, but you can't resist it.
He rotates it every 15 minutes when he eats it.
Exactly. And every single person that you're looking at Survival Dispatch is in therapy for being an addict to Greg's jerky. So check this out. If you go to wasatchwagyu.com, I'll put the link down below. And so if you hover over shop and then go jerky, it'll come up with 2 pages of stuff. Anywhere where you see this black circle that says sale, it's something on special. Well, the one on the top right here, Wagyu Jerky Protein Pack 9-piece. Greg's running 50% off on this right now, so instead of $60, it's $29.99. But you can also use my discount code SD20, so Sam David 20, get another 20% off. It's like $24.99. It's incredible. I get by on this stuff many times when I'm in a rush and I don't have time to stop, make something to eat. I eat the Wasatch Wagyu and I'm good to go. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Pastor Eric. He's going to close us out with a prayer like he does every Friday night. Then I've got a new closing video that's something a little bit different. Let me know in the live chat if you like it, or if you don't like it, then I won't play any more stuff like it. But Pastor Eric, it's all you, brother.
Thank you, brother. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you again for the opportunity to come before the throne of grace boldly, as your word commands us to do. And Lord, I do pray for our SDN family tonight. Lord, I pray for not only the folks on SDN, but their families as well. Lord, every one of us goes through difficult times and situations, but your word says that tribulation worketh patience, and patience experience, and experience hope. And hope maketh not ashamed, because the love of God is shed abroad in our hearts through the Holy Ghost, which is given unto us. And thank you so much for the precious word of God that gives us so many directions and directives, and Lord, how we need to live our lives that would bring glory and honor to you. And Lord, I pray for the ones that we talked about earlier, the little ones that get caught up in this trafficking, and even the older ones, Lord. Lord, I pray for their souls. I pray that, Lord, I'm broken and beaten, and Lord, we know that you can make a man whole. Well, thank you so much for the precious promises in your word. Lord, again, we just pray for these men that are on this panel tonight. Lord, keep them safe. Lord, watch over them. I know that every one of them has a price tag on their head. Lord, I think of Khalid tonight, who we haven't heard from in some time. Lord, we just pray that you would be with that man as he tries to recover from all that he's been through. And Lord, we just pray that you would, again, show yourself strong in his life. And again, thank you so much that we can lift him up to you. Last but not least, Lord, I not only think of our SDN family, but I pray for our law enforcement, first responders as well. Lord, these men and women that put their lives on the line to keep us safe and healthy. And Lord, we just pray that you would continue to bless them. Lord, we think of our troops tonight here and abroad. Lord, those that are in harm's way trying to keep our country safe, as well as helping others in their time of need as well. And Lord, certainly last but not least, I pray that you would continue to bless this great United States of America. Lord, the land of the free, certainly the home of the brave. We thank you so much. Lord, I think we've forgotten in our pledge, it says we're to be indivisible. Lord, there's certainly division in our country today. Lord, we just pray that there might come a revival of that indivisible, where we can stand together as one yet again, as a country, not divided, but Lord, giving ourselves wholly to you. Again, Lord, thank you so much for being able to come before you. Thank you for these men and women. Thank you for all the good and perfect things you have given us. And Lord, I pray that you would continue to get the glory, the honor, the praise, and the worship due your name. I ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. All right. Thanks, Pastor. I will be back Monday evening, usual time, 7 p.m. Eastern, with my next Reacts video on the, let's call it SHTF breaking out in Belfast. Between now and then, please like, share, comment, subscribe. This is Chris Evans signing off. God bless our law enforcement officers. God bless our military. God bless America.
God bless.
Enjoy the closing video. This is a new one.